enfoque malintencionado y están esos periodistas que ya no hayan que hacer en medio de las conferencias de prensa y que son mal guiados muchas veces por los buroes informativos de sus cadenas. El periodista de New York Times, que estuvo formando parte de esta comparecencia amplia de Caroline Leavitt, cuando se vio que no tenía nada que preguntar, decidió preguntar en la conferencia de prensa algo tan estúpido como por qué el presidente Trump llamó al presidente Putin en privado. Esa fue la pregunta que tuvo The New York Times. Entonces, si son niveles de periodismo, ¿por qué lo llamó en privado? Cualquier niño que no va a la escuela entendería el por qué y la respuesta. Sin embargo, esta fue la pregunta que tuvo este periodista como parte de la rueda de prensa. Esto pasará a la historia como un ridículo muy bien documentado. Mírenlo aquí, evidencia.
The point is to get everybody on the same page. Why wouldn't Trump just take the call from Putin while the other leaders were in the room? He said it would be disrespectful to do that. But why is it disrespectful?
With all due respect, only a reporter from the New York Times would ask a question like that, Sean. The president met with all of these European leaders at the White House 48 hours after sitting down with President Putin on American soil. In fact, there was so much progress in the readout that was given to these European leaders immediately following his meeting with President Putin that every single one of them got on a plane 48 hours later and flew to the United States of America. And if I could just read for all of you some of the statements from those European leaders yesterday, you had President Zelensky himself saying it was a very good conversation. It was really good. We spoke about very sensitive points. The Secretary General, Mark Rutte, it was the president, only because of the president, that this deadlock was broken, but with President Putin by starting a dialogue. So these leaders, who this war is in their backyard, are very grateful that the president took that call and that he was there to provide them with a readout of Russia's thinking on this, something that was not done by the previous administration at all. Catherine.
Mientras el New York Times se pregunta por qué el presidente llamó a Putin a solas, Zelensky dice, fue una conversación muy buena, fue realmente muy buena, se abordaron puntos muy delicados. Mientras el reportero del New York Times pregunta por qué Trump llamó a Putin a solas, el secretario general de la OTAN dijo, fue gracias al presidente y solo gracias al presidente que se rompió este estancamiento con el presidente Putin al iniciar un diálogo. O sea, si el reportero quería obtener un enfoque distinto, pues los líderes del mundo que vinieron desde Europa hasta Washington para pedir ayuda fueron quienes le dieron la verdadera respuesta. En medio de todo este punto de la guerra, hay otra pregunta frecuente. La pregunta frecuente es, ¿cuántas guerras se van a seguir pagando con el dinero de los contribuyentes de los Estados Unidos? El presidente Trump logró aquí negociar un camino hacia la paz que va a regalar varios escenarios. Entre esos escenarios va a regalar el escenario permisivo de poder dotar a Europa de una línea defensiva para que estén vigilantes ante el posible ataque ruso. O sea, Europa tiene que estar muy armada, tiene que estar muy lista. Ese frente lo tiene que conformar Europa. Estados Unidos le daría un apoyo logístico y el armamento que se utilizaría para fortalecer los límites territoriales de Europa saldría de los Estados Unidos. Por lo tanto, la Unión Europea pagaría por este nivel de armamento estadounidense. O sea, además de ser líder del mundo y garante de la paz, Estados Unidos hizo su negocio como parte de la cita de Washington porque le va a vender a Europa este armamento que ellos están necesitando. Esa sería una respuesta concreta para quienes cuestionan hasta cuándo tantas guerras pagadas por los contribuyentes de los Estados Unidos. Esto fue preguntado también. La respuesta se acerca a mi argumento, pero aquí hay mucho más. Evidencia.
So with that, I will take your questions today. Here in our new media seat today, we have Jack Posobiec, who joined us in Anchorage, Alaska last week. Jack, thanks for being here. Why don't you kick us off?
Caroline, thanks so much. So a couple of questions regarding the status of these peace talks. Obviously, we saw the President and President Putin there in Anchorage. We saw the world leaders here yesterday with this summit. We've heard phrases like coalition of the willing. We've also heard Article 5-like guarantees. When it comes to the security guarantees, what is the current status of that? I know the President earlier today mentioned boots on the ground would be UK, France, Germany possibly, but unequivocally said no U.S. troops on the ground, but U.S. coordination. Can you elaborate on that, and what would the red lines be?
Sure. Well, you got to the heart of what I was going to say to all of you today on security guarantees, which is the President has definitively stated U.S. boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine, but we can certainly help in the coordination and perhaps provide other means of security guarantees to our European allies. The President understands security guarantees are crucially important to ensure a lasting peace, and he has directed his national security team to coordinate with our friends in Europe and also to continue to cooperate and discuss these matters with Ukraine and Russia as well.
Helen, now, have the Russians responded at all? I know we spoke with President Putin last night. What has been their response? Because we've heard some reports from the Kremlin and others saying they're unequivocally against NATO troops on the ground.
Well, look, the President continues to have these conversations with both leaders. Those conversations took place in Anchorage, Alaska, again yesterday with the Europeans and President Zelensky, and he has directed his team to come up with a framework for these security guarantees that can be acceptable to help ensure a lasting peace and end this war.
And then just last question real quick on this. Regarding some of the funding, we're hearing questions about another round of weapon sales or possibly a round of U.S. purchases of Ukrainian drones. Will that money be funded by the U.S. taxpayers? Are we finally going to see an end to the U.S. taxpayer-funded, seemingly endless mandate for these foreign wars?
Well, the President is very sensitive to the needs of the American taxpayer, and immediately upon entering office back in January, he made it very clear that we're not going to continue writing blank checks to fund a war very far away, which is why he came up with the very creative solution to have NATO purchase American weaponry because it is the best in the world, and then to backfill the needs of the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people and their military. So that's the solution the President has came up with. We'll continue to see that forward. As for any additional sales, I'll have to defer you to the Department of Defense.
Mejor dicho imposible, prevalece esa preocupación. Todo cuanto se va a usar va a tener un pago por parte de la Unión Europea que comprará este arsenal para defenderse a los Estados Unidos, y el presidente ha dejado claro que sería una coordinación logística. No habría efectivos, no habría soldados estadounidenses en el terreno como parte de este conflicto. Esta no es nuestra guerra, ha dicho el presidente Trump. Tenemos que terminarla. Estados Unidos tiene que sostener el liderazgo, pero en medio de toda esta coalición estará el apoyo de Europa. No habrá efectivos de los Estados Unidos. Hacemos otra breve pausa. Regresamos enseguida.